Here we go. First day of June. One more sleep. And we can awake from our sleepwalk through this provincial campaign. Welcome in, Dave Trafford here. It's the Writ Race, the daily edition of On the Ledge, the Ontario Politics Podcast. Flying solo today. We got all of our regular, usual suspects moving into position. They're doing rehearsals for various programs that they're going to be on election night. Sabrina's going to be sitting in with the folks at CBC. Keith Leslie will be at CH Television. And if you've been following him along on social media, our friend John Wright from Maru Public Opinion is in Europe. Booked this vacation some time ago. Took his boys to see the F1 race in Monaco. Cool, huh? What a dad. What a dad. Way to go. And then they're going off to, I think he said they're going to Vimy Ridge, for the D-Day acknowledgement. Yeah, so John's got quite a history. We'll have to get him to tell you about it. He found this box full of photographs. Actually, I guess they were albums. For those of you who are sort of new to this planet, we used to keep our pictures in books called albums. And John's got albums with pictures of his grandfather in France. I think it was in France, pretty sure. At the end of World War I. And the cool thing about the photograph is he's in the picture with the King of England over there. Post-war, celebrating the peace. Yeah, John's got some really cool artifacts that he found collected over the years. A guy, based on the conversation we had a few weeks ago, he didn't even know he had them. So that's where John is. We'll get his stories when he returns. So anyway, I just want to kind of set the tone for tomorrow. It's going to be kind of an interesting pace, I think. We will. Bob Reed is going to join us, and Keith Leslie will be back in the chair out of the rehearsals at CH. And what we'll be able to do is more or less sort of set the tone of what we should expect or what we should be watching for on election night. And I was on with Mark Towhey last night on News Talk 1010. Mark doing the 4-hour marathon every night on provincial politics. In any other campaign, that would have been, jam-packed full show. Got to give it to Mark. Holy cow. He's doing 4 hours a day on this election, and as quiet as it has been. Kudos to him and his producer, Ben Harrison, for, making the show interesting, bringing on cool guests. I mean, but they had to resort to having me on. So it's kind of hitting the bottom of the barrel there. But when you look at Mark is able to talk about politics in Ontario for 4 hours a day, and you've got our friends at the Toronto Star doing their fact-checking, and the headline is, Doug Ford broke the Star's fact-check. Well, they're trying to fact-check some of his statements, right? And it's very difficult. Why? Because he's not talking. It's true. He's just... Let me just read from the article. This is a great piece that Lex Harvey does, and she's been following this along, and they have been kind of testing how much they stretch the truth, that kind of thing, right? So they go through all of what these declarative statements of fact might be that each leader offers up on a given day. And over the course of 5 days, Doug Ford, between last Wednesday and this past Sunday, so 5 days, he made just 19 factual statements. And here's a couple of examples. We're getting the province built. Okay. How do you check that? You can't. It's uncheckable. We're going to continue focusing on putting money back into people's pockets. Okay. What's the context for that? Lex here points out you can't really prove the intention, so uncheckable. If you want to get it done, you have one choice, the Ontario PCs. What is it? What is it getting done? So again, uncheckable. All very forceful statements, but not really checkable. There's no one that's supporting autism community more than our government. Probably debatable, but again, uncheckable, right? So last Wednesday through Sunday, in this final stretch of an election campaign, Doug Ford held two news conferences where he spoke to the media. And I know you've heard Keith Leslie on here, about peekaboo, this, that, and the other thing. This really puts it into context. Now, keep in mind, Mark Towhey can go on the air Monday to Friday and talk about politics in the province substantively for 4 hours. Give or take a few commercial breaks, newscast here and there. But he's in the chair for 4 hours. And I know there's prep going on a good 4 hours ahead of that. In the 5 days that the Star was tracking Doug Ford, he spoke for a total of 25 minutes publicly. 15 minutes at one news conference, 10 minutes at another. Yeah. So compare that to Andrea Horvath. She spoke in that same period of time publicly in front of the media for 130 minutes. So just over 2 hours. Still half of what Towhey's doing on a daily basis. Del Duca, 2 hours even. 120 minutes. Mike Schreiner, 60 minutes. So it's really interesting to see, how the pressures of this final few days of the campaign have come to be just a bit of a sputter. That, well, certainly as far as the media is concerned. Here's what it tells me about the opposition parties. We know why Doug Ford is doing what Doug Ford's doing, because it's working. He doesn't have to talk to me, any of the media, doesn't have to do that. Because we'd ask him questions he wouldn't want to answer. We keep going back to the example of Sean O'Shea chasing him down, because that's the only way he could get Doug Ford's attention, and asking him some difficult, uncomfortable questions, which is kind of O'Shea's shtick, right? So there's an example of that. But Doug doesn't have to do that to win, clearly. But when you think about in this final campaign, the final weeks of the campaign, you've got the three major opposition parties in total barely spoke to the media for 5 hours over that 5-day period. 5 hours. That's less than an hour a day among all of them. Right? Now, I get it. You're busy. But I keep coming back to when I was first on these campaigns, you'd have 2 or 3 opportunities a day to talk to the leaders if you were on the bus or the plane. There'd be an event in the morning, an event at noon, an event and a rally at night. And in each case, after it was finished, they'd probably be there with a local candidate talking about whatever. So even in a day, cumulatively, that might have taken up 45 minutes or an hour. Not unusual for the whole thing to last 15, 20 minutes at a time, right? So there you go. Remember, Stockwell Day, when he was the leader of the Reform Party, on the last day of the campaign, he made some kind of like 12 campaign stops in the day. and talked to the media in every one. But the problem was he didn't give the media any time to file the story. Bit of a fail there. So kind of went overboard in that one. So what this tells me here is they've turned their sights inwards. I know they're all, trying to say ramp up the media coverage, and certainly we're seeing and hearing more ads, attack ads mostly. But it tells me that each of these campaigns now has turned inwards and said, okay, let's get the machine moving. And you'll hear John Wright often say, where are the buses on this last week? Well, they don't have a bus. Okay. Where are they making stops? That Schreiner is spending so much time in Parry Sound, Muskoka, tells me that they think the Greens have a real shot at winning that seat. Right? And for years has been in the Tory benches under the name of Miller, father and son. So there's a real familiarity, literally and figuratively, with the conservatives up there. But given the dynamics, because the Liberals don't have a candidate there. By the way, the Liberals are the only ones who don't have 124 candidates running. The Ontario Party, or the, what do they call the new Blue Party of Ontario, has that many. Really? But anyway, Green is in there. So they're spending that much time, I think, because they think they've got a real shot at winning. And the more I hear from people on the ground who are watching the numbers there, we should really be watching that one. So that will be one I'm going to have on my scorecard on Thursday night. The other thing to be looking at is where the NDP is. And I think we sort of touched on this last couple of days. They are unmistakably focusing on ridings that should be a no-brainer for them. They're defending their turf. All right, I talked to Mark Towhey about this a couple times over the last couple of weeks, and where the premier was making announcements prior to the election about e-vehicles and batteries and all that kind of stuff, really giving a boost and some juice to the auto manufacturing. That has gone a long way in saying, oh, okay, you're one of us. And cutting the grass that is traditionally NDP property. So those will be the ones to watch, certainly in southwestern Ontario, and the ones in and around Windsor for that. And that's, interestingly enough, where Horvath has been spending a lot of her time. And we joked about it yesterday. Stephen Del Duca spending more time talking about how he's shopping at Fortino's. Maybe he'll be a greeter there as of next week, because all indications are right now he's really fighting an uphill battle against Michael Tobolo, who beat him handily in the 2018 vote. Sure, the Liberal vote collapsed, but incumbency matters first. Second, out of everything that happened during the COVID disaster, Mike Tobolo went about his business quietly, minister responsible for mental health in the province. And yes, you know what? I think almost every frontline minister who stood beside the premier during the COVID news conferences, the daily briefs, remember that? Every day we'd get those. Christine Elliott, as the health minister and the deputy premier, took heat because of what was happening in her portfolio. Certainly, Fullerton, got pushed. She got promoted to a higher portfolio because she did such a shitty job in long-term care. And then, of course, Rod Phillips just out and out quits. Yep, that's it for me. Sorry. So there was stink on all of them. All of these key ministries and the ministers involved. But Tobolo, quietly went about his business, taking care of the portfolio, and by all accounts, doing his bit to serve his riding. There would have to be a real push to want to get him out of there, considering the margin. I think it's like 8,000 votes. Something really blew him out of the water. It was a huge margin. So for the voters in that riding to say, okay, yeah, welcome back, I'm not sure that their memory is that short. That in fact, you'd be that forgiving just because now he's the leader of the party. I've said all along that this should be a reset election for all parties concerned. Certainly it is for the Conservatives, because it's no longer Doug Ford and the Conservatives. This is the Doug Ford party. But what's interesting about it is COVID has reshaped Ford's brand in no uncertain terms. He has had to actually feel the heat of leadership. The direct consequences of his actions became apparent every time something happened in the pandemic. Criticize him or not, that actually sort of steeled him to criticism. And I think, in fact, steeled him, provided resilience for him politically to be able to serve up the kind of budget that they did only, 28 days ago. Because that's just not a conservative document. It isn't. So, it's far more progressive than it is conservative, which was not Doug's brand 4 years ago. Right? So this really is a reset moment for Doug Ford. If he wins going away, I'd be willing to bet that he'll win another term, at least another one after this. He will be a 3-term premier, without question. Because this new version of Doug has made people feel comfortable. If we're trusting what we're going to see on Thursday night, look at those numbers. That is a new, call it improved, version of Doug Ford. So there's a major reset. And it was an unexpected thing, right? Nobody would have expected this. 4 years ago, we never would have said the Doug Ford who's out there right now avoiding the media, not talking to us at all. Never mind yelling at us. I mean, you might have expected that. He's not even doing that. Nope. Just going about his business. He's getting her done. We would not have expected that 4 years ago. Del Duca, bad mistake. It was a mistake from the Liberal parties to begin with. They had, a cast of folks who ran for that job who were all so closely associated with the Wynne government that there was no way to win there. And what did they do? They picked the guy who lost his seat. Michael Coteau could have been the leader of the party, right? He's now the MP in Ottawa for the same riding. Mitzi Hunter, sure, she only won by, this many votes in the last election, but she survived. She won her seat. They picked the guy who got pounded and somehow think that he's going to be the one to revive the new Liberal Party. Well, no, it's not happening. Even if he wins his seat, the seat projections suggest they're going to finish third anyway. And I think the really frustrating part for so many people is to look at two opposition leaders where they have set failure as a success for themselves. Failure being, well, we're satisfied to be the leader of the opposition. We're satisfied to be an official party. Really? Okay. Well, then you get what you deserve. The NDP, of course, we've got as Sabrina Nanji has been reporting over the last couple of weeks, the 901 Club is all ready to go. As soon as the polls close, 901, there will be a contingent of those in the NDP who will say, okay, Andrea, just sign here. Thank you. That's your resignation letter. Effective immediately. There's no way that she comes out of this, even if she wins the opposition post, official opposition. Not a chance. That party needs a reset. And it'll be a reset for the Greens if Mike Schreiner doubles his seats, goes from 1 to 2. Right? And really important because it will have been a seat taken away from the government, not from another progressive party. So it's not like they were, sort of a second choice. We can't decide between the Liberals and the NDP, so we'll vote Green. No. It's a steal from the Conservatives, the governing party. That is for Mike Schreiner, that would be viewed as an important step. Again, a reset. So this election right now might be about nothing, might be the Seinfeld of all campaigns. But here's what it's going to do. It's going to set the track and the path for the next campaign right away. And I'm not suggesting that I want to be in campaign mode for the next 4 years. Lots of work needs to be done. We have to recover and reckon our way out of COVID. That has to be stick-handled. And if the parties were to do this right, you'd see a whole lot of bipartisan effort to get that done. It doesn't mean you don't have a brand. It doesn't mean that you don't have a policy, issue that you are going to attack and tackle, that you do not have platforms or directions or areas that you are going to live and die by. But if moving forward, the opposition parties were to say, take more of the stand that Mike Schreiner does and looks and says, okay, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. That's not being indecisive. That's recognizing that the Parliament has to work together. And let's get it done because we really are going to have a lot of work to do once we get out of this campaign. When we all come up for air after this summer and look around and the kids are going back to school and we're all kind of looking at our unofficial new year, because that's when things restart. When businesses have to be back in offices, maybe. All right? When we're going to start to look at, municipal election. That's going to come up in October. And all of a sudden, we're going to be in a place where a lot of this ground level fallout from COVID is really going to be front and center. COVID will be in the rearview mirror for the most part. And we'll have a new government. The tone of that first week or so is going to be critical in terms of resetting then for the province itself. Keep an eye on it. That first throne speech, going to be a doozy. What does the premier say? Going to be a humdinger? Yeah. So things to watch for Thursday night as you are checking off your election bingo card. Right? The Greens in Parry Sound, Muskoka. What happens to the NDP in the Windsor, southwestern Ontario area? Watch Scarborough, too, because a lot of those seats, 6 seats in Scarborough, they're in play. None of them was a runaway win for anybody in the last election. The Conservatives think that they can beat the NDP there. The NDP seem to think they can beat the Conservatives somewhere in the Toronto ridings. Okay, well, there's not that many, but still, right? And then I think you've got to watch Vaughan Woodbridge. Because that one will be, I think it'll be decided fairly quickly. Whether Del Duca returns to the legislature at all, never mind whether he survives as leader. Yes, it will be an exciting time. All right, so be sure to join us, and then we will have our morning after post-mortem on Friday and wrap things up with On the Ledge. I'm Dave Trafford. It's the Rit Race, the daily edition of On the Ledge, the Ontario Politics Podcast.